You can stack it by hand. No crane, no heavy equipment, no crew of specialists. It clicks together like oversized building blocks. And a homeowner who has never touched construction in their life can raise a wall in a weekend. Once you pour concrete into that form, the wall tests to wind resistance exceeding 200 miles per hour in independent laboratory conditions. It insulates at roughly 10 times the value of a standard stud wall. Your heating and cooling bills drop by half, sometimes more. It has been in the International Building Code for decades. It is not experimental. It is not pending approval. It is legal right now in every state in this country. And after every major tornado outbreak in the American Midwest, aerial surveys tell the same story. One structure stands. Its walls are intact. Its concrete corners are still square. Around it, in every direction, bare foundation slabs. Debris fields where houses used to be. The neighbors had foundations. That house had walls. Tens of billions of dollars in tornado damage occur in an average decade in the United States. The material that could prevent much of it has existed for 30 years and represents a tiny fraction of new construction in the states most likely to be hit. It is not banned, it is not experimental, it is not even expensive. It is just invisible to every system designed to finance, insure, and approve the home you are allowed to build. That is the story. And when you follow it to the end, it stops being a story about a building material. If safer homes shouldn't be a secret, subscribe and stay with us. This is exactly the kind of thing this channel was built to dig into. The first thing most people assume is that ICF must be illegal, unproven, or too expensive for a normal contractor. None of that is true, which only makes this stranger. ICF, insulated concrete forms, works like this. Two foam panels locked together around plastic ties, forming a hollow block. You stack them into walls, run steel rebar through the cavity, and fill the whole assembly with concrete. What you are left with is not a wall. It is a monolithic reinforced concrete structure with integral insulation on both sides. Closer to a bunker than a house. The concrete core does not flex, does not rack, does not pull apart at the corners when the wind hits. In an EF3 tornado, a frame house fails at its waistcoat connections. The anchor, the roof plate, the corner joints. An ICF wall is a single poured mass. No connection points to fail the same way. The concrete resists the load. The rebar holds the form. The system performs as a unit. Here is the honest thing you deserve to hear. ICF walls are exceptional. ICF roofs are a different question. A wood truss roof on top of an ICF structure is still a wood truss roof, and in an EF4 or EF5, roofs fail first. A genuinely storm-resistant ICF home requires a reinforced concrete roof or an above-code safe room. That is where cost escalates. ICF is a major upgrade. It is not magic now. Where did this come from, and why does almost no one in Tornado Alley use it? ICF emerged in post-war Europe, Germany and Canada, the 60s and 70s. The original driver was not disaster resistance. It was thermal performance. Cold climates, brutal winters, buildings that needed to hold heat without the heating bills to match. ICF solved that problem extremely well. It reached North America through Canadian builders first, earning International Building Code recognition through the 90s. What followed was not a breakthrough. It was a slow accumulation of evidence the system was not built to act on. Post-disaster surveys documented what contractors already knew. ICF structures in tornado corridors were surviving events that leveled everything around them. The survival data was real. The market response was not. A material born from the energy crisis quietly proved itself in disaster zones it was never designed for, and found that survival, commercially speaking, was beside the point. Subscribe if you want to understand why. This channel exists because that sentence should not be true, and because the more people who understand how this works, the harder it becomes to keep it invisible. So why isn't everyone building this way? The answer requires two separate villains, and neither of them is a secret conspiracy. They are institutions with documented incentives, doing exactly what institutions with documented incentives do. The IRC, the International Residential Code. is the baseline permitting standard for most residential construction in the United States. It includes prescriptive pathways, pre-approved methods any contractor can follow without hiring an engineer or commissioning tests. Those pathways were written around wood frame construction, not because wood is the safest material. The evidence on that is not ambiguous, because wood was already dominant when the code was written, and the people who wrote it represented the industry that builds with wood. The American Wood Council maintains a substantial code advocacy operation with staff dedicated to the International Code Council's development process. Their interest is not in banning ICF. It is in ensuring wood retains the frictionless path. No extra documentation, no engineering stamp, no special approval. That advantage compounds across every jurisdiction, every year, every permit. ICF under the IRC typically requires an engineered design. A licensed structural engineer must review and stamp the plans. Additional cost, additional time, additional friction, not because ICF is less safe, but because the path was not written for it. The code wasn't written to keep ICF out, it was written for wood. ICF just happened to not be wood. The second villain is the insurance actuarial system, and this one operates without any malice at all, which is almost what makes it worse. Insurance companies price risk using loss-cost models. Those models are built on historical claims data. How often does this type of construction suffer a loss? How severe is the loss? How much does it cost to repair or replace? The Insurance Services Office, ISO, maintains construction class ratings that define how most residential property is categorized and priced. ICF falls outside the standard classifications, not because it is dangerous, but because there are not enough ICF homes in the loss history database to price it with actuarial confidence. What this means in practice is that a homeowner in a tornado-prone state who builds an ICF home, a home statistically far less likely to suffer total loss, may find themselves quoted a higher premium than their wood frame neighbor, or denied standard coverage entirely and routed to a non-standard market where the pricing assumptions are worse. The actuary is not malicious. The model was simply never built for materials that don't lose. A house that survives a tornado doesn't generate a rebuilding contract. It doesn't generate a new mortgage application. It doesn't generate a new contents claim or a fresh policy renewal at post-loss pricing. The math of the construction economy runs on replacement, not resilience. That is not a conspiracy. It is an incentive structure, operating exactly as incentive structures operate. The system doesn't need to suppress a better material. It just needs to never make it the default. Now look at the aerial footage from any major Midwest tornado outbreak in recent years, and find the image that post-storm engineering surveys have documented repeatedly. One structure standing in a debris field, walls intact, concrete corners still square, windows blown, debris piled against the exterior, the roof damaged from where a truss system failed, but the walls held. To the left, 3 bare foundation slabs. To the right, a single interior partition wall, still standing, unattached to anything on either side. The ICF house required repair. The houses around it required rebuilding. That is not a hypothesis. That is what the post-storm record shows, again and again, in survey after survey, in the regions where tornadoes routinely reach EF3 and above. A family on one of those surrounding slabbers goes through the same sequence: emergency housing, insurance claim, mortgage gap, rebuild negotiation, contractor delays, a new wood frame structure on the same lot, same risk profile, because that is what the insurance will underwrite, what the bank will finance, what the contractor knows how to build. 3 years later, they are back in a house almost identical to the one that did not survive. It is not banned, it is just not the easy path. Those are not the same thing. Here is where this becomes actionable, because this channel does not tell you what is broken, and then leave you there. ICF is legal under the International Building Code in all 50 states. Residential adoption depends on which version of the IRC your local jurisdiction has adopted, and how it handles alternative materials. So the first step is confirming your local permitting requirements. Most building departments can answer that question directly, and most will if you ask the right way. ICF manufacturer training programs are widely available, and owner-builder projects using ICF have been successfully permitted across multiple states. The learning curve is real, it is not prohibitive. If you are pricing new construction, request ICF explicitly in your bids. Many general contractors can learn the system with a single project. Some already specialize in it. The cost differential at construction is real but modest, and it narrows substantially when you factor in reduced energy costs over the life of the building, and the reduced probability of a catastrophic total loss. For insurance, the relevant ask is whether a carrier rates your home on construction class, masonry or concrete construction, rather than routing it to a non-standard pool by default. Some regional carriers and specialty market carriers price ICF correctly when they understand what they are rating. The conversation is worth having before you build, not after. For financing, the conforming loan market through Fannie Mae and Freddie Mac depends on comparable sales, and ICF comps are rare in most markets. Portfolio lenders, smaller banks and credit unions that hold their own loans, are meaningfully more flexible and are often the right starting point for non-conventional construction. If you are in Tornado Alley and you own land, drop shelter in the comments. We have a legal pathways breakdown, a state-by-state code summary, and a contractor resource list we will send directly to everyone who comments that word. A house that doesn't blow away is a house that doesn't need to be replaced. Follow the money from there. That is the system, not broken, functioning, delivering outcomes that benefit the industries built around the assumption that houses are temporary, codes written around one material, actuarial models priced on one loss history, loan products calibrated to one type of comparable sale. The family in Tornado Alley pays for that system, on average, every time the sirens go off. And then again when the adjuster arrives, and again when the contractor quotes the rebuild, and again when the mortgage resets. If this made you angry, that anger has a use. Share this. Show someone who is building. Show someone who is buying. The information is not suppressed. It is just inconvenient to enough institutional interests that nobody is making it easy to find. Subscribe. This is one in a series. There is more. The most dangerous thing a house can do in America is never need to be rebuilt.